everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to dye some sock blanks. It has been a while since I've dyed a blank in a dedicated video versus dyeing one in a live stream and just showing it in a recap. And so I thought that that is what we would do here today. Now, what is a sock blank? A blank is a piece of knit fabric that is designed to be dyed and then unraveled. And so you can do this to create gradients and fun, random patterns on yarn. The blanks that I'm using today are Wool to Die For's Platinum sock blanks that are double stranded, which means that there are two 50-gram balls of yarn that are knit together in this fabric. So that way when you unravel it, you have a matched set of yarn. And this is especially perfect if you want to make a matched pair of socks. Then you can dye the blank in whatever random colorway you want, and you'll end up with a perfect pair. Platinum is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and it's really easy and fun to dye, and I'm really excited to dye this today. Before we go prepare these blanks for dyeing, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to today's lab partner, Belle. Belle, thank you so much for being my lab partner for this episode of Dyepot Weekly. I also want to mention that you may notice a difference between this talking head and one that I'm going to show in just a couple clips. Sometimes there is a bit of time in between some of the dyeing and editing of various videos. But if you would like to learn more about how you can become a last-minute lab partner like Belle and pick through a video of Dyepot Weekly that has been filmed but where the editing has not yet started yet, you can find a link to the listing down in the video description. So thank you, Belle, and let's get back to the video. To get started, I am going to pre-soak these blanks in some water that has a lot of vinegar and maybe even just a little bit of citric acid in it, but no dye or anything like that. I am pre-soaking in here. Oftentimes I pre-soak in water with no acid, but this bucket happens to have acid in it, and so that is why I am doing that. And I'm gonna let this soak for about 30 minutes. One element of sock blanks that I personally really enjoy is that there is resist from just the stitches being knit up. And sometimes you can get some color on just the surface of the stitches. Sometimes you get color penetration all the way through, but this can lead to some really interesting speckling and modeling. Some people may not care for this. They may want smoother color transitions. And so if you want more even coverage throughout where you place the colors on the blank, I recommend soaking for longer than 30 minutes with no acid so you can slow down the rate that the colors strike. Starting with probably also a cool vat of some time to really give time for that color to sink in to the various areas, even if you're doing a gradient or something variegated or something like that. But personally, I say embrace that resist that you have. And one of my favorite ways to do it, which isn't what we're doing today, is actually to use a spray-based technique, which will give really shallow penetration of color. And you can do one color on one side and another on maybe a pattern on the other. And you can get sort of alternating speckles, which is really unique and fun. Today, we are going to do some immersion dyeing with fluorescent neon colors. I'm not necessarily aiming for like a gradient. It's going to be more of a variegated kind of thing, but we'll see how the colors want to mix together once we go start dyeing the yarn in the pan. But the 6 colors I have here that are acid dyes already mixed with citric acid are Fluorescent Fuchsia, I've got Fluorescent Safety Orange, Fluorescent Lemon, Radioactive, which is also fluorescent, Frozen, which is not fluorescent, and then Purple Pop, which is fluorescent. In each of these, I used 1 tablespoon of citric acid powder and then mixed a reasonable amount of the dye in there. This functionally dilutes the dye, making it easier to spread out onto yarn. Today, I'm not necessarily aiming for speckles, and these fluorescent colors will spread when we add them to the yarn. Some of them have pigments that strike really quickly, and others have some that spread out more. But we are gonna have some fun playing with rainbows on these sock blanks. While I am using these dry powders, I will be wearing a respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves. And all of the tools and equipment that I'm using in this video are dedicated for dyeing yarn and are not used for the preparation of food. I have my 4-inch deep, full-size catering steam pan across 2 burners on my gas stovetop. And now we're gonna add the sock blanks in. Here are the 2 blanks. And so I want to arrange them while attempting to not unravel. You can make your own blanks. I have some videos on how I use like kids knitting machines to help make my own blanks, but arranging them in the pan, I want to, let's see, make sure that the edges aren't completely curled and sort of give it this scrunched but a little random. I don't want just scrunched vertically. I want some scrunches horizontal, and to get it so it fits in the pan really nicely. Now, these 2 blanks, even if I add the dye like in stripes in the exact same places, they will not be identical to one another just because of the randomness of how they are sort of scrunched up here in the pan, and that is perfectly fine. If you want things to be more ordered, you probably want to paint on a countertop and then steam set. But that's the perk of having 2 strands of yarn knit together, is that no matter how random it is in the pan, each blank will give a matched set. Now I've got maybe like 600 milliliters of the Presoak that I'm adding just so we have a bit more liquid in here. There is some liquid at the bottom, and I'm trying to decide because depending on how much you want things to spread, right now there's yarn that's absolutely above the surface, but I think I'm gonna add more of this water, which does have acid. Okay, here's like another 500 milliliters. So when we add the dye powders, when the dye strikes the water first, it will spread more, but there are areas where it can hit the yarn that is at the surface, and then, well, they're fluorescent colors, so there will still be some spread, but maybe not quite as much. I am going to turn on the heat so we can start heating this up. Of the 6 colors that I have, I currently have the most of the fluorescent fuchsia. So depending on how much of the other colors I actually have, this will likely be rather pink heavy, but I also think that a pinkish rainbow would be really, really fun. Ooh, what if I add like the pink to either side and add the other colors in the middle so they'll get on each blank? That's a fun idea. I haven't done something like that before. Maybe we'll try that. Okay, it is nice and warm. I'm going to reduce the heat to low. And I'm wearing my respirator, so I am a little more muffled. And we're going to come in and start adding color and seeing what happens. I am going to start with some purple pop, just down here, sort of speckle it onto both blanks. I'm not sure if we're going to go in random or rainbow order here in the middle, but we'll just start someplace and see what happens. So as I mentioned, frozen blue is not fluorescent. It is a beautiful color, but it is not fluorescent and doesn't pack the same punch. This is radioactive. The main thing I'm going for here is trying to make sure I add color to both of the things. Now, what I don't know, I think this is yellow. Let's see, the yellow looks a little orange when you first put it on. Okay, this is the yellow and not our fluorescent safety orange. When I've speckled with this before, I definitely had moments where I was like, oh my, this is looking really orange. I want to pull back. And then realize like, oh, actually, that's fine.
This is actually really, really fun. And I'm really enjoying this effect that we have. And yeah, I think that I want to like extend this. I think originally I thought I was going to go a little more random, but that's the thing with dyeing by feel. You may not always know exactly where you're going to go, but you can have a lot of fun along the way. And I definitely had some orange on my fingers for that interface. The thing I don't have right now is a yarn mop. My fingers got a little steamy. So when I say yarn mop, I mean a skein of yarn that has been soaked in acid that you can use to wipe off your fingers. I have not been wiping off my fingers as I go between these different colors. I haven't really felt that need to do that because since they're mixed with citric acid and these aren't dye stocks, I'm not that worried about color transfer or contamination in any way. So I'm going a little heavier with this frozen blue. I suppose I could use true turquoise, but this works well. Okay, so a little more purple pop. And what I don't know, and I cannot say for sure, is how far on each of these I have gone with this rainbow we've created in the middle. That's not something that I can really look at and say with confidence, like, oh, okay, we've got awesome coverage. There's going to be spread. There's resist with how we have these scrunched up. But what I can confidently say is that I've got at least a little bit of each color all over. Now I'm coming in. Now, when I unravel these blanks, there's usually like one end that things unravel easily from. There will probably be, like, they'll probably unravel in opposite. Oh, actually, it depends on how they have them aligned. So we don't know for sure. But them being a mirror image of each other isn't really going to affect how things knit up. Okay, but I do want to go a little heavier towards the outside edge. And then a little lighter. The reason for going a little lighter in this middle, I don't mind if there is some white, but I don't want to lose our yellow. That is always the concern whenever I do rainbows in one pot. It's that the yellows will disappear. Because yellow, with the nature of the color, is not very pigmented. This is so fun. So much fun. So there's acid in the pan, and there's acid in our citric acid powder. Oh, and another thing I'll mention is since these rainbows are at, this rainbow middle is at an edge, each section will be a little longer. Not long enough to be self-striping, but you could, depending on the project, see micro stripes because you'll have the length like there and back because these are flat blanks. But we did not use up very much. Let's go there, and we can go a little heavier near this edge to sort of match. This is so pretty. I am really, really excited by this. But the thing I want to remind myself as I come and add more is that like there isn't necessarily going to be color in all these little like divots. So I'm coming and adding just a little bit more Oh, my finger is a little wet. A little bit more speck. I'm switching to the other hand because I don't want to introduce moisture back in. There we go. How's that?
I'm going to raise the heat up a little bit, but now we're going to let this heat for 30 minutes. And for now, I'm not going to touch things, which takes a lot of self-control. I really want to go and push down to help these colors move through, but I also don't want to help the colors, I don't want to help the pinks come in here. So I will heat this, and once things get a little bubbly, I will reduce the heat back to low, but I'll be back in 30 minutes. Oh, I really hope I didn't burn anything. It still sounds wet, but I looked and I was like, I don't see as much liquid over on the sides, and that makes me nervous. So before we check, I'm just gonna add a little more water. Oh, Rebecca. I keep saying I haven't burnt yarn yet. Hopefully this is not burnt. I mean, nothing smells burnt, and things were still wet looking, but I just didn't see extra water around the edges. All right, I do see, I mean, most of the dye is absorbed. There might be a little bit of dye that hadn't just been dissolved yet because it was on the surface, but let me get more of that pre-soak water and pour, actually I'll pour over the middle towards sides. Okay, now we're like really nicely covered. And I'm going to turn up the heat. I don't see tendrils. It actually looks like things are pretty well set. I think that there just might be some areas where hopefully this won't spread too far, where maybe we had some dye like on the sides, but overall things are pretty good. And this is pretty much what I wanted to do at this stage anyway. So I'm gonna bring this back, the temperature back up, so we're right below a simmer. And then I'm gonna reduce the heat to low heat for 10 minutes, then turn the heat off completely to let, just let the rest of the colors absorb. But it seems, you know, I'm not seeing tons of color move around. Yeah, there's just like a hint as I move it of like a little bit of pink that comes down, but things have basically absorbed. And you can see from how we have it, we have areas in here that are going to be more pastel and blend together, and I'm just really, really excited to see what this looks like, because it looks super bright right here. But don't forget, a lot of the yarn, as we spread it out, we'll have like some fun areas in the middle. But anyway, I'll be back once things are cool. The blanks are now completely cool, so we can go wash them. But I just wanted to show that the water is clear. When it comes to washing the blanks, felting isn't really a concern. The concern that I have, ooh, fun. Okay, this one is more subtle with the purple. Ooh, but this is super fun. Does this one have, oh funny, the purple, like, because this is why. Purple Pop has these like bluish purple specks and then a pink spread. So it's less dramatic than some of those other colors, but this is still super fun. But anyway, the big concern is whether or not the blanks will start unraveling, and so that's sort of where you want to take care with this one. I have found that Knit Picks blanks, and I'm just adding some dish soap, Knit Picks blanks don't unravel as easily accidentally as Wool to Dye For's, but Wool to Dye For's blanks are significantly cheaper. So there is that. And let's see. I'm not seeing any bleeding. Wahoo! Let's go ahead and do a nice rinse. So what I'm going to do now is rinse out the soap, put the yarn through my spin dryer, and then hang them up to dry so we can see how these blanks turned out. Here are the finished dried blanks, and this is so much fun. They are overwhelmingly pink, but a pink rainbow. And the orange, yellow, green, and blue really, really shine. The one area where I wish I added a bit more was with the purple pop. And mainly purple pop is purple and pink, and so there are these bright purple speckles, and then a lot of pink spread probably is from that purple pop. But to really have that show up against the pink, I should have used more of it. Otherwise, this colorway is just an awesome neon rainbow. You can really see where these speckles hit and where they spread for all of the colors. I think the fluorescent fuchsia is one of those colors that spreads the most, that and purple pop. Whatever that bright fluorescent pink molecule is, just takes more time to set, making this an ideal sort of canvas for this yarn. I absolutely could have gone heavier with all of the colors, but it's still so bright and fun. And I am so happy. I think I'm especially happy that there is still yellow. It doesn't look orange, it doesn't look pink, it looks yellow. Ha ha! Under the black light, I see, well, I mean, I guess what you see is expected, with mostly the orange and the yellow shining and some of that yellow from the green, and then we see the pinks from the fluorescent fuchsia and the purple pop. Unfortunately, there is not a fluorescent blue, so that doesn't show up under a black light. Another thing I could have done if I wanted more saturation or coverage from these colors would have been to let the colors soak in, except for maybe some of the pinks, which takes longer. And then I could have moved this around. Or I could have, and I think this is something I did once before when I was trying to do a speckled gradient, but I could have had most of it scrunched up in one end and then the other side fairly out, done some of the colors, and then moved, even with 2 blanks in the pan, moved it down to then have more access to more area as I dyed sections and moving it further down. But let's look at the wrong side of our blank, and you can see that we have reasonable color penetration coming through. There will absolutely be some speckles in the finished yarn, but that's because we have variation in bright and dark patches on the blank itself. As for resist from the stitches, there likely is some and might be some modeling, but most of the variation will come from how the dye is applied versus the blank itself. You can sort of see what I'm talking about here where it starts to unravel. You can see that our 2 50-gram skeins are going to be really well matched. And there is, I mean, it's the edge also, so it's a little hard to tell, but there is going to be some modeling and variation just because of the way that the blank is. But then with the, I think the exception of a bit of the end, the 2 50-gram skeins should be really well matched. The one exception seems to be this end where they don't match up over this last like 12 inches. And that is likely because there may have been, it doesn't look like this length was knit into the blank. And so one section may have curled over to the pink and one to the orange, and that's why those are slightly different. But otherwise, the 2 strands are knit together, and so we should have a matched set. I don't plan to unravel either of these blanks myself. I think that part of the fun of a blank is that you can knit from it directly and that you can unravel it yourself. But with all the sock blanks that I have dyed and listed in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop, I always offer the option to have me unravel the blank for you. If you, for example, just don't want to knit from a blank 2 at a time, or you don't want to unravel it yourself, I can do that for an additional small fee. And so that all of those details are always in the listings for all of the blanks that I offer intact. The big reason why I'm not unraveling it is that this is one where I feel like it's a little easy to predict how it could knit up. It's almost as though I took a skein, say we have 5 mini skeins, and half the skein is pink and half is either a little purpley speckle or a little blue. So this is something that, because the size and placement of these speckles varies, it's not necessarily gonna pool. but you could end up with some micro stripes maybe, or some really fun patterning with these pops of color and with all the pink. It really depends on what you make with it. But either way, I know that the yarn is going to look like pink with some darker pink speckles and then some of these other colored speckles that go in a bit of a gradient. So that you can tell from looking at the blank. But exactly how things will position themselves, that'll be a surprise. Belle, thank you so much for being my lab partner today. I adore how this blank turned out. I love the pink and the other neon colors, and these neon fluorescent colors are some of my favorites to dye with in general, but I am always excited to play with them more in the future and intend to play with them more in the future. So again, Belle, thank you so much for being my lab partner today. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I love fluorescent colors and playing with these bright pops of neon, and a little bit really does go such a long way that when I dye one set, I end up with leftovers that I use in many other videos. So you'll be seeing these colors pop up in a lot of places. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you're subscribed to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. I publish at least 2 new videos every single week. And while you're at it, turn on those notifications so YouTube can let you know when I make a new post, or we do a Leave No Dye Behind live stream or unboxing and fun things like that. If you love the yarn I dye, please go check out my Etsy shop. You can find links to everything down below. And the question I'm going to leave you off with, should I try this again, but maybe try to pump up the volume and the color even more? What do you think? Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching.